If this text sounds familiar to you, it should, because I preached the version from Mark's gospel at the very beginning of the month. The texts are similar, but not exactly the same, at least not in the context. In Mark's gospel, a friendly scribe, a lawyer, asks Jesus the question about the greatest law in a conversation in which he's kind of grooving on Jesus. He likes the things Jesus is saying, and he just wants to keep talking about it. He's kind of curious. But in Matthew, the question is in the context of a controversy. Jesus' teachings are causing a stir. Jesus says he's not come to abolish the law, in fact, not to change the law, but to fulfill the law, to talk about the end to which the law belongs. In other words, how to fulfill the law correctly, truly. So this double commandment to love is a summary of Jesus' whole teaching ministry. He's a rabbi, Jesus is, who honors the Tanakh, or the teachings of Moses and the prophets. And he's claiming to be the sort of paradigmatic or penultimate interpreter of both. One writer says Jesus is the God-authorized end-time teacher who knows the true way. I don't know. But Jesus' teachings are setting hearts on fire, capturing the imagination of the poor and the disenfranchised. Some people want to shut it down because a revolution is about to happen. Some people want to trap Jesus into blasphemy to make it stop. So this conversation on love, ironically, is happening in a context of contest, of fear, of trickery, of a certain kind of maliciousness accompanied by violence. It's a context of power struggles, of wrestling with who's right and who's wrong, who writes the story about what it means to be the people of God. It's a context of tussle between old and new, of shifting ideologies, in the context of political unrest and growing frustration and a fever-pitched cry of the poor and the underdog who are being stepped on by the strong and the mighty. In that context, Jesus is saying love for neighbor must teach us how to love God. In that context, Jesus is saying love of God must include love of neighbor. And this is the kicker. Jesus is saying to love neighbor means to love enemies. What? Love your enemies too? You've got to be kidding. Now, the word for love in this text is agape. And I have to admit, Jim, I have to admit to the magical ways that I've talked about agape love throughout my whole ministry. At every wedding, just about, I lift up agape love is the love that comes from God, the special love that comes, the special unconditional love from God. Unmerited, unconditional, undeserved, unlimited, all-powerful, unwarranted love of God, agape. And when I do that, every time I say eros, erotic love, different. I say phileo, friendship love, different. Agape love, special, magical God love. Well, I've been wrong. I've been wrong, Jim. I've been wrong. The word agape in itself is not a magical word. In fact, just like in English, we talk about love using different words, agape means love in the Greek in lots of different ways. Like it shows up when they're talking about lust. Who knew? It shows up when they're talking about love of power. Who knew? Love of war, agape. They use my magic word agape all kinds of ways in Scripture. I was wrong, Jim. I was wrong. The word agape gets thrown around in Greek writers all kinds of ways because they're not that careful. Just like the word love gets thrown around in our English writing all kinds of ways because we're not that careful. Listen to this blog I read recently by a young woman named Ryan Fergans in an e-magazine called The Believer. We got to all get a subscription to The Believer. She used the word love in some fascinating ways. She wrote, "Looking at our summer of widely publicized police brutality and harassment through the lens of love as a motivator, it is clear that the love of power and authority that corroborates superiority, once safeguarded by the guarantee of white skin's historical reign, now verified by blue uniforms' proven invincibility, led a California Highway Patrol officer to pound Marlene Pinnock's head into a highway median strip 15 times. That same love clutched Eric Garner's neck until he relinquished his last breath to a gum-crusted, spit-soaked Staten Island street." She better preach. In Ferguson, Missouri, where Darren Wilson fired 6 rounds into Michael Brown's reportedly surrendered body and ended an 18-year life with miles of unfulfilled triumphs and mistakes in its future, love pulled the trigger, she wrote. She goes on to say, "Love does not limit its influence to zealous law enforcement. It abounds throughout life's public and private astronomical and misdemeanor offenses. Hatred didn't lead jihadists to hijack and steer commercial planes into New York's 2 tallest buildings, or ISL operatives to behead kidnapped Westerners. Unconditional love for culture, religion, and belief in its supreme truth did. Likewise, a love for religious supremacy leads fundamentalist Christians to terrorize the secular and coerce LGBT congregants into identity-destroying conversion therapy. Love of control and dominance drives an abuser's fist into a victim's face. This is not," she says, "to disclaim hatred as an operative force guiding cruel offense. On the contrary, it's love's ever-present calling card, a symptom of its existence. Hatred, the heart's allergic reaction to that which threatens its reason to beat, is always poised to defend love's honor." Wow. Wow. The word love is bandied about in all manners of ways. But what does Jesus mean? For me, it's clear that Jesus' love is not about affection. I heard Nadia Bolz-Weber. Have you guys heard of her? This wonderful Lutheran minister who wrote a book called Pestrix. She's a tatted up, wonderful person who says, the feeling of love is overrated. She says, don't feel it, just do it. The kind of love that Jesus means, the kind of love commanded of us, is a stubborn, unwavering commitment, one writer says, to imitate God as it relates to the world. Jesus' kind of love demands us to recognize the humanity, friends, the humanity even of our enemies. It is to empathize with their circumstances, to take their needs seriously, to see them as God sees them, as part of God's amazing creation. Love your neighbor as yourself means to look at the one that you can't stand and see reflected there an image of the holy God. Oh my God, really? I don't know. That's a lot to ask. I love the way Cornel West says that justice is what love looks when it's lived out loud. In that same blog that I just read from, Dr. West says, anytime you have a deep commitment to loving your neighbor, you hate injustice. When you love folks, you can't stand the fact that they're being treated unfairly. He says Jesus knew there was a revolutionary implication in that. He says you're not liking them, you're loving them, because you can't hate folks no matter what color they are, but you can hate the injustice. Now that starts sounding really eerily close to hate the sin, love the sinner. But I like the way West is flipping that around. We can't hate God's people, because to hate them, he says, is to freeze them in a moment of time and to not give them a chance to be redeemed or changed or transformed. Can I say that again? To hate them is to freeze them in a moment of time so that they can't be changed, they can't be released, they can't be redeemed, they can't be liberated, they can't be transformed, and they can't be changed. Malcolm X, when he was Malcolm Little, was a gangster. If we had hated him, he would have been frozen in time. Dr. West knows because he used to be a gangster too. To love each other is to free each other, to liberate each other, to give each other a chance to be transformed by the love of God. Okay, now that starts feeling a little better to me. And again, this isn't about warm fuzzies. We do not have to like each other to love each other. We don't have to, go out and have tea and crumpets with each other to love each other. To love is a posture of acceptance that one too belongs to God and deserves to be seen and known and received and have grace and have food on the table and clothing on their back and housing and safe spaces to learn and grow and to be treated with dignity and humanity. You see, it moves from the particular to the political when we love the way Jesus is describing. Love, to quote our friend Titus, is therefore an action, not a word to be heard, an everyday action that honors and sees and receives and frees and liberates and authorizes a full life for every human being on the planet, no matter who they love, no matter how they look, no matter what they do to make a living. That's what Jesus is talking about. Now, we know from our history about the way love looked. Love in the work of Fannie Lou Hamer, standing in for voters' rights and standing up against lynching. Love in the life of Martin King and Ralph Abernathy, marching across bridges to Selma and through the city streets to make sure that all of God's people were freed from racism. Thousands of students sitting at lunch counters and riding on buses in love, for love, out of love, to change the racist nature of our land. But you know what? There's a love movement going on right now in our nation. And it's located in Ferguson, but it's got tentacles all around our nation. It is being fueled by a whole bunch of young people who might not even know how to say Dr. King's name right, People still try to call him Muffalufa sometimes. King, you've heard it. But these young people who are on the front lines of a movement called love, radical love, that'll take a risk, that'll stand in the way, that'll risk being hit by cops and arrested to make sure that love superabounds. So when I'm thinking about love today, I'm not just thinking about the past, I'm thinking about everyday, present tense people like our own Camille Beckles, who we sent to Ferguson a couple of weeks ago, who wrote this to me and Adrian. A word that keeps coming to mind when I think back over the weekend is powerful, she said. It was powerful to see so many people of all backgrounds coming together during the march through downtown St. Louis. Powerful to stand in solidarity with the Ferguson Police Department. Powerful to watch every night and protest with a community that's been tirelessly fighting for justice for 75 days and counting. But besides being powerful, she went on to say, the weekend also left me with something I didn't expect to feel: hope. Our justice system has proven repeatedly how little Black lives matter. And given how things unfolded since last August, I have very little hope that Darren Wilson will be indicted, she said. But what does give me hope is that the people of St. Louis have been fighting for this long and they refuse to give up. Though there is not any one clear leader, it is clear that this struggle is organized. It is strategic, it is passionate, it is powerful, it is enduring, and that gives me hope that it will continue. I love that. Love lived out loud as justice means a kind of tenacious commitment to God's picture of a preferred reality. God's picture of a preferred reality, which means quite simply that every human being is seen and known and loved for exactly who they are. It means quite simply that each is entitled to unalienable rights like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It means you actually don't get to pursue happiness when you're wondering how you're going to feed your family, which means that we have to work for a living wage, and we have to work for sick pay, and we have to work for equal pay for women and men. And we have to make sure that people are not discriminated in the workplace because of how they love, who they look, and how their identity is performed in terms of their sexuality. Love that is lived out loud as justice is an unwavering commitment to respecting the unique particularity of every human being, man, woman, child, old, young, and in the middle. This is what Jesus was calling us to. Oh, so, personal piety, just me and Jesus kicking it, I'm all good with the Lord, and the Lord loves me, and I love him back. And we're having some kind of relationship, just me and my Jesus. That's not what Jesus was talking about. He was talking about love that encompasses the whole human family, even the people who don't believe in Jesus. The kind of love, the greatest love, is the kind of love that channels God's universal delight in every person. When we're loving with the Jesus kind of love, to quote my nephew, we're channeling God. We're channeling God to and for each other till every system that is broken is fixed, every place that is crooked is made straight, everything that is wrong is made right. The gospel turns it upside down and then makes us all free. Okay, so you got to love yourselves, folks. We talked about that a few weeks ago. But on the way, all along the way, we've got to love each other to wholeness, to liberation, to freedom. I love the way Titus wrote it. Love is an action. It's a verb, not a word to abuse and take lightly, just said to be heard. And everyday actions and reactions are chances in making love active. Let's act up. Let's act up. Let's act up, dudes. Let's act up, friends. Here's what you can do. 1, keep art and soul as a spiritual practice. We can't really get the love thing down by ourselves on a mountaintop someplace or in our closet. We got to be in community to practice love. And if you can't get here, then come online. And if you can't get here at night, then come in the morning. But come to the place where love is happening. 1, 2, hold November 19th for a date to be with this community and Reverend Billy's Church of Stop Shopping, and Joan Baez is going to be here, and we're going to have a big old Ferguson friend-raising moment. So hold November 19th. 3, and you might ask yourself, what does this have to do with anything? But on November 4th, vote. Voting is an act of love. It's an act of love that honors all who have gone before us to make sure we could vote, and it also honors your agency as a human being who can make justice happen. Get to the polls and vote. Don't take that day off and go get your hair did. Go and vote. And and then finally, act up everywhere in love. Act up, speak the truth, call foul on the junk. When you're standing next to somebody who's feeling like it's okay to abuse somebody, Get inside your own power and be like, that is not okay. Call foul online. Use your social networks to make love and light your personal call, because it is. We who believe in freedom must love our neighbors, love our enemies, love our enemies, love our neighbors, love our God. It's not about warm and fuzzy. It's about truth and freedom. It's about the greatest love. Y'all got it. Let's do it.